What happens when a parent's worst nightmare becomes reality? When the person you love the most in the world is fighting for their life and you're powerless to help? Today's guest, Adam Lopez-Delon, knows this pain intimately. From watching his child battle severe health complications to working in one of the most mentally challenging environments imaginable. Well, don't know if you can imagine it, to be honest. I certainly couldn't. An abattoir. Adam's journey is one of raw resilience and transformation. This story is about connection. It's about parenthood under pressure and finding purpose through the darkest moments. I'm Andrew White, and this is Leading Our Own Way. And welcome back. Anyway, here's the trailer, and Adam, enjoy the episode for part 1, and we've got 2 parts this week. Please go and follow and give us a review where possible. Enjoy, guys. Have a great week. Welcome to Leading Our Own Way. I'm your host, Andrew White, and this is the podcast that unveils captivating narratives of resilience and personal triumph. This podcast is for anyone seeking inspiration and insights on overcoming life's challenges. Follow and subscribe, and then we can lead together forever. Adam Lopez, welcome to Leading Our Own Way. How are you tonight, man?
I'm very good, my man. Very good.
Thank you for joining me.
In the same room, virtually with you.
Yes, and I must say, your background, I'm kind of jealous. It's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you so much. Definitely invested a lot in this, and there's good reasons as well. So.
You can tell, and we're going to dive into it, aren't we?
Yes, we are.
I want to start off by how we met, Adam. I think I want to tell everybody how we met because that's what I'm all about is connection, and I love the energy that we had when we first met. We met at one of my former guests, Alex Ward. She held a speaking event, and I met you whilst having some food.
Yeah,
and we just started talking, and instantly, it felt within a minute that we'd been speaking. I think I was already touching your shoulder by this point, and we were eating off each other's plates. Now I'm joking about that bit, but we seemed to vibe, and we just got into the storytelling immediately, didn't we?
Yeah. It was just this energetic connection. Like when I saw you, in fact, I saw it like it was a person at the front, and you randomly sat next to this person. So it turns out it was your old neighbor that you had back in your hometown, right? And I saw that. I'm like, who was this individual, right? Something about him. And then obviously there was speeches, and then on that break, both gravitate towards the table. And I actually was like, man, I've got to connect with this guy. Don't know what it was, man. Just like stood next to you. I'm like, I've got to connect with him. So
love it.
It was definitely that moment. It was a vibing moment for sure.
Yeah, it was. I loved it. And we got into a little bit of your journey, and you didn't give too much away that night, I must admit. But I knew there was something there, and I knew that we had to meet for a pre-chat. So we've been doing this for some time now, haven't we?
It's a bit of a journey even to get to this point, for sure.
Yeah. It's hard with families, though, isn't it?
Mate, when you've got 2 kids, 2 and 4 years old, if someone says to you they have no time, I call bullshit to that. It's always time, especially for good connections, right? So you've got to make time for this kind of stuff. So,
You do. And I'm meeting your lovely wife, Evelyn, next week as well.
You are. She's also got an amazing story.
She has.
Yeah, so it's someone that definitely would do well connecting with.
So that means I've got another family in the Leading Our Own Way community. I love it.
Yeah, that's how it should be.
It's definitely how it should be. So Adam, then let's get on to your journey. You're leading your own way in many, many different ways. Tell us a little bit about how you're doing that.
Well, shall I start from the start or which end of the spectrum? Well, I can tell you what I'm doing currently and perhaps work backwards. And but really, it did start with 2 kids. I think that's the first thing. Those 2 kids literally changed my life. I've got a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and it crosses over into my wife's story. But okay, we'll start off in the hospital. We're in the hospital with my firstborn. She was born during COVID. And we're in this hospital because she had a condition called Sandifer syndrome. And there was times, for example, that why we arrived at the hospital was that she'd be at home and we'd be with her, and all of a sudden she'd just flip her head back, and we thought, wow, is she having a seizure or something? And I thought, well, right, there's something really wrong here. And then in our room, we put her side on in the cot, and all of a sudden she profusely just started vomiting and couldn't stop. And thought, right, there's something really wrong here. So immediately went to the hospital, and it was basically 2 years of just hardship with our first child, with health complications and issues. that was a precursor to how I started leading my own way, with both my wife and I, and of course our new family. And we're in the hospital. And at that time, I was, my background is business. I've ran a company, built a telco company. We can get into that as well. And arguably the hardest industry. But to start this family, I quit my job, went straight back into corporate. So I ended up working in enterprise sales, and that's very cutthroat, as you can imagine. But being in the hospital with my daughter, who's just gone through this whole thing, and here I was running tenders, government contract tenders, while my little daughter was connected to all these machines to scan her brain, and she was losing weight fast. And it was my wife who sort of looked at the whole situation and said, "What are we doing? Like you're working." And not because I wanted to, of course, but I had to. These are $1 million contracts to close down on. And it was a point of change. And we thought, right, this is where we're going to start. We're going to start with changing how we run our family. And that was the first turning point.
So how long were you guys in hospital during that period of time with that new employment?
Yeah, so it was... I was working there for about a year. It was probably about the 9th to 10th month into it.
Wow.
And that
She
was
in
the
hospital
time.
that long?
Yeah, not until that long. So she was born as I got the job. So this is when COVID just transitioned into lockdown.
Yeah.
And I was told that first I was going to get the job, then I wasn't going to get the job. But mate, there was a lot of arguments between my wife and I just to even get to that point. Just a bit of a precursor on that. When you're an entrepreneur and you go from a 7-year building your own business, you're the CEO, you're doing lectures, you're doing speeches, then all of a sudden, I'm not paying myself any money. I think that's the first point. My wife pretty much said, hey, you can't pay yourself $2,000 a month. If you want to start a family with me, you need to make some moves and start to maybe get a job, right? So I had 3 other investors and directors in that business, and I had to make the hard decision to literally just walk away from the business. And that was, I guess, the precursor to making that decision. And then obviously having the job, earning a lot of money. It was a really well-paid job. I was on around about $250,000 a year. I tell you what, money does not solve anything. Was I any happier? Was I thinking about my paycheck? Absolutely not. Obviously, it was a blessing to be able to go from $2,000 a month to $15,000, $20,000 months, and but it wasn't. Yeah, it was definitely wasn't the way forward. So
wow.
But in hospital for 2 years, that was the first thing, was Sandifer syndrome. Then she developed sepsis, arthritis in her right shoulder. That was another stint in the hospital. So literally the first 2.5 years of her life, she was in and out of hospital, and it was a very, very hard time.
Yeah. So how old was your child when everything started to level out health wise?
About 2.5. 2.5. 2.5 when things started to click over. That Sandifer syndrome lasted about 2 years. Then she had the surgery on her shoulder, and just holding her while she was so tiny, going into the room where she gets anesthesia injected into her. That was just from that to all of a sudden recovered. It was about 2.5 years old. So for those who, can you say that name again for me for what it was? Sorry, I can't pronounce it. Sepsis arthritis.
No, the one before.
Sandifer syndrome.
Yeah, for those who don't know what that is, could you just tell us a little bit about that?
It's actually well documented in America.
Right.
You would dare say it's a form of GERD or really severe reflux, where the stomach or the throat can't really sort of keep down or process what's in the stomach. So, for example, every time she would have milk or something, we'd have to keep her upright for like 30 minutes every single time. Every single second would be, is she going to have an episode? And if she does have an episode, then we need to call the ambulance pretty much every day for 2 years. So Sandifer syndrome, it's, again, heavily documented in the US. Not many people know about it in Australia. People just think it's reflux, and it is quite rare as well. So,
do you know what the ratio is on that?
I'm not sure about the statistic ratio. In Australia, again, it's not diagnosed much. We had to see a lot of specialists to then come up with that conclusion, and we had a really good pediatrician who pretty much said that this could be what it is. But many doctors before that just didn't really give us any indication of what it actually was. So yeah.
So what mental strain did this put on you and your wife, Evelyn?
When you got something so small and precious, you were just, for us, it was the norm for our first child because you get used to being under pressure all the time. You're living in a state of fear all the time. You're literally, no matter where you go in a shopping centre, what food you feed her, you don't know when it's going to happen. It was just constant. It was literally constant. So what was night and day was when we had a second child. There was a 22-month difference, Alyssa, and completely the opposite. It was like a normal baby. And then we sort of realized, like, wow, this is what it's like to have a toddler at 2 and a baby that you could just literally roll around on the floor and actually treat like a baby and just throw her up in the air and all that sort of stuff. It was night and day.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, and then obviously that's where Evelyn felt the pressure and what needed you to leave. That's where I wanted to go first. The position that you were in before, and you said you had business partners and so on, stakeholders, right?
Yeah.
How long did you have that business for before your children were born?
Yeah, it was. We started that business in 2015, and it was invested in, and we ran that business. That business was sold in around about just before COVID. So as I worked for around about 9 months in my corporate job, it was sold. It was sold to someone in my network. So yeah. So before the child, I was in that business for about 7 years, 6 years, and then it was sold shortly after that. So
yeah, nice.
Yeah.
So then the new position that you had to go and obviously find some form of income. It was very well paid. Before Evelyn said, right, this is not how we can live our life anymore. We need to make a change. How long were you in that position then? Because I know you said
that's a good question. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry.
Sorry about that. Really good question because being an entrepreneur, you don't want to get into any form of a job. The transition from being your own boss and running a team and inspiring people to then, the prospect of getting a job. It wasn't immediate. It was, I'm starting a new business. So the idea was I started like a marketing agency and was close-ish towards Christmas, built it up really fast. Then all of a sudden, Christmas hits and then my revenue went from, $12,000 a month down to zero. And then she was like, we can't do this. We need something stable, essentially, if we're going to do this family seriously. So, yeah.
Yeah, wow. So then you went on a new adventure when she said, right, we can't live our lives anymore. Tell us a little bit about that, because that was when everything seemed to change for the positive, right?
Yeah, so this is the time. So obviously in hospital, this is Optus Enterprise. We had a sort of longer term vision about what we're going to do to get back into leading our own way, right? So going back onto that, which is let's build our empire together as a family. I went from that to working at 2 major software companies before I completely committed to what I'm doing here today. So the first one was like working at, you may have heard of DocuSign. So I went enterprise sales there. That went for about a year. Then I was poached to work for HubSpot. So it was a good 2-year gap between when we officially made that decision to what we are running today.
Yeah, nice. So tell us a little bit about the business and what you're doing there.
Yeah, so right now, we've got a company called Sales Command. We officially started this company in February this year, and that was a wild ride in itself. A business partner, it didn't work out. But the business that we have now officially was, March to April. So we're talking, 3 months worth of running it with the new brand Sales Command. And this business is all about, we specialize in implementing sales systems for small to medium businesses that basically just increase the bottom line rapidly, which is the idea. So we're able to go and find dream customers, create custom messaging, and just basically augment what people do using AI, a lot of coding. It's more of a coding and development company from what I'm seeing. We used to hear the thing about copywriters, but no, you can actually build a lot of code that really speaks the language to the business, to the target customer, that's completely tailored. So we'll build these sales systems now. And that's the current business of today. and it's growing so damn fast. So,
and where did your passion come for something like this then? Because I've never heard of anything like that before, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a good question because we hear a lot about lead gen companies where you'll get someone doing cold calling, or you'll find like a lead gen agency that would just do cold emails, and then they'll email 50,000 people to get results. But for me, it's about the sales system, sales process. Where I got that from was my first business, so Mesh Telco. When we started that company, it was just a software company. Okay, we had this technology from the UK that I and a few other business partners white labeled. So in other words, we licensed from UK to Australia, and I rapidly was selling this technology. And it wasn't until I met this investor that I used to do marketing for in my previous job that I did really well marketing his business. And then the marketing manager said, "You must meet with this investor." And so that was, and then we said, right, let's take this technology as what I proposed. Let's build it in-house. That had a software dev team, and let's sell this under 100% hours. We don't need to pay license fees or royalties. And it was born. And we started off selling in gyms. We did extremely well. And then there was another big problem. Well, the problem was if we're selling a solution which was for Wi-Fi. So, for example, if you go to like a hotel, cafe, or airport, when you're standing in an airport, the first thing you do when you land is like, what Wi-Fi connection network can I connect to?
And there's a lot.
It's right. If you got to it's a lot there. It's risky, but when you sign in, it's about data capture. So we build the platform that does that, but we rolled it out to like restaurants, gyms. But then the issue was internet. So back then it was only ADSL in Australia. NBN was like, the equivalent of what was meant to be fiber internet. It was rolling out really slowly. So as we sold more of these things, we had issues with internet. So we're spending more time on the phones with their internet service providers. And we thought, well, why don't we own that side as well and control the quality of, let's become a telco company and just combine the two offerings. So then we went down the rabbit hole of building a telco company with zero experience. And me, myself, I've got no technical backgrounds. So here I am with this ambitious idea. I've got this software which marries up to hardware. And now all of a sudden, hey, let's build a telco company. So I'm off. I fly to Sydney to speak to people. And and then Mesh Telco was born.
Wow.
And then, so there's a whole story. So back onto your main question about what sort of sparked the passion. My whole life has been sales, okay? My whole life has been sales. I left school extremely early. Worked in an abattoir, which we can get to. There's a lot of stories about this slaughterhouse or the abattoir that we could speak about.
Yeah.
Excuse me, sorry. So once we're in the abattoir phase, it was, I didn't know what to do with my life. I had no qualifications. I didn't finish year 11. I was there for 5 years, but what I went straight into was selling. So I went straight into working at call centers, and I learnt the art of selling. I'd read a lot of books, and that whole phase of my life was an absolute mess, and it was crazy. But so in totality, I've got about 15 years of sales experience. So then launching this Mesh Telco company, what am I good at? I'm good at selling. I can close really well. But then when you're building a business, we've got investor money coming in. We built our own internet network. So it wasn't just now reselling like ADSL internet from like Telstra or, Optus. It was like, let's own internet.
Yeah, wow.
So we ended up, So in Australia, there's like, I don't want to bore you with detail, but there's like all these fiber optics connections running everywhere throughout Australia. If there's problems with like connectivity, why can't we just grab one of those fiber links, plug it in? Well, it's very expensive. So we came up with the concept of like, let's beam this fiber internet onto a rooftop of a building, and let's share that across all these businesses and homes that have poor internet in areas. So we launched our first fixed wireless network, and then we hired a whole team to try to sell it door to door, calling, getting leads from yellow pages and trying to call businesses. And we had a team of, there's about 18 people that we employed in total. So we had 12 people doing sales and door knocking. Then we had the customer support team. We had me, the 3 other directors helping with tech support. And we were losing $70,000 a month, every month for freaking ages. We were just losing burning cash. It wasn't cheap to build your own internet connection. So it turns out.
You think?
So it was the whole story. Like finding these rooftops, I'd have to like go in through these buildings, I went to the Eureka Tower to see if we can get fiber onto that building to beam it to Glen Waverley. There's all this stuff that we were doing, but to do that, it wasn't cheap. So where it was born and where my passion was, well, there was a point in time where we were losing so much money. There was one major deal that would have net the business around about $1 million worth of contract. And it turns out that whilst we were at the tail end of negotiations, the person that we brought in to help deploy this technology to this massive, massive business park, this solution, ended up snaking us and stealing the deal from us. And that was the deal that was going to turn everything around. And the day that happened, I was in a boardroom sitting there. So me on one side and the 3 directors on the other side. So all 4 directors were there. And the main investor was just leaning over the table. So how did you lose that deal? Smashing the table in front of me. And that was, and I'm the kind of guy that just doesn't sit there and takes it. Like, I'm trying to be calm, but the more you are aggressive towards me, the more I lean forward as well. Got very heated, very intense. He wanted to bring my general manager that I hired to head up the project here to berate him, and I refused to. I said, nope, it is all on me. I'm the leader of this. The reason why the deal was lost was, I was against my gut instinct to bring this partner in, and I'm going to take the blame for this. And the meeting ended very abruptly. At that point, we were losing so much money. And then that was on a Friday, and that meeting ended. I ended up going home, and then on a Saturday morning, this is when I met Evelyn, my now wife. While I'm at her house, I received a phone call from my mum, hysterical, and I heard this beeping sound while I was on the phone in the background, and all of a sudden I heard the sound, and my mum just crying ballistically, and the ambulance were there trying to resuscitate my dad while I'm in my new girlfriend's house at that point. So my dad was basically passed away the next day after that happened, and so I'm like, and I knew in my heart after hearing all that my dad passed away at that point. And I gently hung up the phone, and I proceeded to walk downstairs and make breakfast, and I ate my eggs, and I drove to my mum's house, which was in a commission house and it was a very hard time. So I got there, and as I'm walking in slowly, I start to walk a little bit faster as I go up the lift, up the stairs, and all of a sudden running to the door. And there my dad was, as I walk in, laying between the doorway. Police were there. The ambulance was wrapping up, and I just instantly went into my knees, and it was just obviously out of control. So my dad, Turkish man, very hard man, very tough as nails. So I lost my father the next day. So what it felt like was, when you're an entrepreneur in business and you're at the point of like you're losing that much money, every single day that you wake up, it feels like the world's going to end. You don't know what to do with yourself. No matter what you do, you're trying to dig yourself out of a hole. You've got to pay, at that point, 15 people. It was 18, including the directors. But you've got to pay 15 people on payroll. Your director's money is going into this. This fixed wireless network's not delivering. Every day is like it's the end of the world. And then the next day this happens, and it was just like I've lost all ability at that point. So that was that phase of my life.
So what happened that following week then, in terms of everything? I'm assuming your perspective, one, completely changed, but the physical sense of where you were at Friday, what happens there then?
Well, at the same time that was happening, I was also going through a divorce.
Yeah, wow.
So losing my business, my dad passes away. The divorce already pretty much was already commenced, and just going through that. And my wife that I have now, she's right in the middle of it all. And if it wasn't for her, I dare say I wouldn't have coped very well at all. I think that's the first point. The second point the next week was just grieving immensely. A lot of regret with my dad, because he was such a hard man, and he was going through dementia at the same time, and he was also doing things to my mum, and she was a wreck before everything happened. So just seeing that, and then all of a sudden that happening. In fact, there was a time but just before this happened, right? So probably about a week before he passed away. So my business is on the rocks. I get a call from my brother, and he said to me that my dad ended up strangling my mum against a wall, and then sort of snapped out of it and let go. He didn't know where he was, and then
the dementia was it?
The dementia kicked in, right? Yeah. And when I say he's Turkish, he served in the Turkish army. He was the hardest man you'll ever meet in your whole life. His parents died when he was 2 years old. He used to sell sandwiches on a street to live, to buy pencils to go to school. So that was his bit of his life, just to give you a bit of a picture of who he is as a man now. Yeah. He had throat cancer, no voice box, trained his stomach to be able to speak. So he speaks through vibrations through his stomach. One of the only men that I believe, I should look this up, but I believe he's the only man that has actually achieved that. The first man in Melbourne to have this surgery of removing your voice box and has a hole in his throat. And usually you need a machine to talk, but he is such a bloody stubborn man that he trained his stomach to create vibrations to be able to talk. And this is all before I was born.
So a voice would come out still, though?
Yeah, it was like I could try to impersonate it. It was like, hello, like it was really sort of like that was his voice to me as a child. Because wow. I've never heard his real voice ever. Never, ever. I used to always imagine what it would sound like. So he's a very hard man. So,
how do you think he got throat cancer? Was it through smoking, the war?
Good question. So he was a heavy smoker, but he migrated to Australia as a skilled migrant, and his skill was welding. So he started welding when he went from Turkey to Germany. He used to weld the Panzer army tanks post World War II, and he used to repair these tanks. And then he came to Australia as a welder and also as a chef. So he used to weld these huge boilers on the inside, and obviously there wasn't much knowledge of. A lot of people have throat cancer from those eras of welding. So it was a combination of the fumes from welding, the metal, the steel, no ventilation, imagine being in a steel chamber, you're surrounded and you're there with this torch just welding, sparks going up everywhere, smoke coming out, and he's just breathing it in. So yeah, that was how he was making money.
What did your mum, whilst we're here talking about your dad, what did your mum do when you were young for work?
Well, my mum used to work in factories, so she would work on the assembly line, doing like automotive parts and electronics for Toyota and Holden. So she was working a lot of day shifts, night shifts as well. Fundamentally, at that point, my dad was always home, so he's the one who raised me as well. So she would be earning the money at this point, and my dad would be taking care of me and my brother as well. So he'd cook, sort us out, take us to school, and my mum would work. So
that traditional mother role back in the day, wouldn't it? I suppose.
Yeah. Literally, is like reversed back then, right? So yeah.
That's how it was for me. I didn't grow up with my dad. I didn't meet him until I was about 8, and my mum went to work. You can't say it these days, but back then did the dad role, went to work, earned the money, and my gran took me to school, made my lunch, made my dinner, made my tea and stuff like that. So, my gran did the mother role. So I felt like when my gran died at 16, I was doing my exams, my GCSEs in England, and I lost my mum, really, Yeah. You say gran, and it's not that it takes the value away from it, because it's certainly, your gran's still valuable, but I lost my mum role in a child's mind, and it's hard. So what was childhood like for you then? Paint a picture of what your house looked like, what you went through as a young person.
So grew up very, very poor. It's a suburb in Frankston. I know it. I was born in 84, so I'm 41 years old. So back then it was, in those times, a very, very rough area. It was like a suburb within Frankston, and called Kringle. So our house was a poor house, but my dad kept it really well. So, for example, 3 doors on both sides, on the same side of the street, there was a murder on each side. But it was normal. So, murder here, murder there. Stories about all sorts of things. Cars would drive around this bend and they would always flip and roll over. Across the road, there was a commissioned house. There was a riot one time. Riot police came in to that house. It was just crazy. As a kid at that age and having a brother who was very sort of influential to me, I was always trying to be like him. He was the popular kid, sort of raised in his shadow. He'd go out and he was well known. A lot of fights. It was always not between me and my brother. It was always just everyone was just punch-ons. Was a normal thing when I was growing up. So I learnt to be very tough very early. But it was normal. Because as a child,
How was he influential to you? So if he was getting into fights, is that because? Sorry, did you get into fights because of him?
No. He knew so many people that he'd be protected. He wouldn't need to fight.
Right.
Yeah. So, I think the main point, like think about my dad, right? So he raised himself when he was 2 years old, and then found a bunch of friends to help him get through life. Right. His parents abandoned him when he was 2 years old, not known, not seen. So do you think he's going to be emotionally available for you? Is there times when he'll say, son, it's okay? No. It was a lot of tough love. Like, it was still love. Like, I love my dad. Like, I love my dad more than my brother. But it was... So if I'm raised in the shadows, it was like I was never connected. My whole childhood, it was just completely disconnected. Yeah. Completely disconnected, yeah.
How was it disconnected? Is there any scenarios or memories of how you could paint that picture for us?
Yeah, well, my mum's also the same, right? She was being a Filipino woman. So now you got a Turkish and a Filipino. But her childhood was picking rice in the rice field and starvation and only being able to drink water from her childhood, right? So you've got these two parents raised in a crazy way, coming to this house, so no EQ at all. They did their absolute best to come from where they were to this house. That was a massive achievement. So it leveled up, because of that. Obviously, we were born, very much more fortunate than what they were, but not emotionally there. So really, it was just guided by my brother, who I just always wanted to be like him, and it was just empty. It was empty. My whole childhood was literally just empty. Literally. It's funny because you asked the same question to my brother, which I did that relatively recently. I said, "What do you remember of your childhood?" And he said, "I had the best time of my life." So, but no one knew this kid who was just, it was just empty and no soul, no personality. It was just, trying to be something he simply wasn't. So it was a very depressing time. Perhaps I was depressed the entire time. I just didn't know it. But yeah.
So now you've got the mindset, the foresight, you've got the hindsight. Now you understand depression, and obviously then you didn't. How would you know the young Adam was depressed?
Hindsight, comparison, so self-discovery. A lot of people tend to celebrate their lives and like, I wouldn't say celebrate, but they sort of like discovering themselves, sort of like, 13 up, and then in their 20s, it's like, traveling, this, that. I never did any of that. And then in my 30s, still suffering. But not until I started to like pick up books and read and think, right, so this is what confidence is. Like every night I used to pray. There was certain things I'd pray for. I used to pray during those times where I used to pray that I could just say the things after the fact in my mind, in those moments where it was really tough when someone tries to bully you. I say the word try because I'd always bite back, but being a brown kid in a very white school, but a lot of racism. I'd have a lot of things to say after the fact, but I used to pray that I would have the confidence, right? So I just knew that I just couldn't speak. There was like this thing that was just, I couldn't talk. Teachers used to call me dumb. It's
Why?
funny because people think, geez, you're so, I mean, I'm not saying again, this is where I catch myself out because I say things like, geez, people tell me that, wow, you're really intelligent. Like, you built a telco company. I don't believe that, right? I don't believe any of that. It's a crazy thought. But all teachers, because you're quiet, you can't articulate yourself. Words just come out blurred. You're constantly putting yourself down. So it's that comparison, and then that realization when I finally started reading books after working at the Abattoir, that I discovered what confidence was and how to actually learn how to communicate, how to connect with people. I'll just divulge. My music back then was in my, when I was 21, 22, people were listening to, I think back then it was, initially when I was in school, when I was actually, playing guitar with Metallica, all that sort of stuff. But for me, it was like listening to Brian Tracy, Zig Ziglar. My CDs in my car were just self-development. It was literally just learning psychology and learning how to communicate. So that was my mission at that point.
Yeah. So what was high school for you? Was this primary school and high school? Did they mirror? Did you have that whole journey, the entire education time, do you think?
Yeah, it was definitely through like all grades of school.
Yeah.
All the way through. It got to a point where like through primary school, I definitely was like, I was put into school a little bit too early. So it didn't help that everyone else is a lot bigger around you. And then, it's just all years up until a point where I let ego get the better of me. So there was a point in time where there was a convergence where, as I said to you before, that my brother was extremely popular. He was well known by all of the different groups. These are the people that tend to start fights. And there's all these different groups, right? He was friends with all of them. And then I never used to tell anyone who my brother was. And then someone just worked it out. I said, hang on, are you his brother? I'm like, yes. And then all of a sudden everything changed. It was like, I hated that. Honestly, I hated that.
Well, I was going to ask you that. I was going to say, having him as a brother, did that not benefit you? So I didn't know that nobody would have known that. I thought that would have benefited you. You might have had some confidence because of who he was as well.
Well, I was a kid that would go to library and play chess.
Right.
So that was my hangout, perhaps because I felt safe and I was scared of people. So, yeah.
Why do you think you were so scared of people at that age?
I just couldn't articulate myself. Couldn't articulate my thoughts. Couldn't actually express who I was. There was no the voice inside me was so sharp and articulate after the fact, but during the time, it was just I had no confidence at all. I had no person. Felt like I used to think, what is personality? And you used to hear a lot of things about personality. I couldn't even work that what that was for myself. Right, my bedroom when I was in the same room as my brother, probably till about 4 years old, I believe. I've got memories going back to 2 years old, which is crazy.
That is, yeah.
It is. I've got flashes, right? I've got flashes of arguments of my mum and dad. But like I was put into my own room all of a sudden. I went from his room, no one explained anything to me. All of a sudden I'm in my own room and it's just this 4 walls and it was dark, it was cold, and it sounds like a prison cell, but it wasn't that bad. It was just like I'd never put anything up on the walls. It was just like I didn't do anything. It was just like I had no character at all. Literally, It was just like I didn't know who the F I was.
And not being able to articulate yourself usually comes from a lack of connection. Being a parent now, yourself and myself, my children are able to read because we read. They have the love because we show them the love, right? My children don't stop talking because we're just constantly talking to them. Sometimes I regret that because we can't have a peaceful moment in the car. I'm joking. But you know what I mean? And they're talkers. So when you have that in mind now, do you look back and go, well, was there a connection between your parents and yourself? Did you have a good relationship with your mum and dad growing up? I know you said you loved your dad, but just going back to those moments around the table or dinner time or in the house, was it silent? Was there playing games together? Things like that?
Yes, as a family, like with parents, it was like the main thing we did. We had a good structure. So early breakfasts, dinners is very well structured, regimented, very consistent. Me and my brother would always play games together, and then at 7:30 it would be home and away, and I'd sit with my dad, and my brother would sit with my mum, and we'd watch TV together. Then bedtime. That was pretty much the routine.
Yeah.
All the games we played wasn't from your mum and dad. For my mum and dad, it was like me and my brother. We used to always play as two kids, and of course he'd dominate me, and I would let him because I want to keep playing. If I win at something, I'd intentionally lose my whole life. Literally, I would and I used to get so angry because I knew I should have beat him. But I'm like, I let you win. He's like, no, you didn't. And all of a sudden, that was an argument. And then I used to just basically submit myself, right? And that carried across to like years and years and years, decades, man. Trying to just undo that part. But yeah, it was a good. So to answer your question, well structured, well regimented. Playing with my brother was everything to me. That was the only thing I wanted to do. And therefore,
connection time.
Yeah, that was it, right? That was the only thing for me. But yeah, just putting myself second always, always. Yeah.
And you've mentioned Abattoir quite a few times, and I think that's probably the point where we're getting up to now. But it ties into what you've just said about letting people win, or you've caved in a sense. And there's a reason. Maybe we start off with why you started at the Abattoir. Can you go into that part of your journey of why you went into the Abattoir?
Yeah, absolutely. So I went to the Abattoir because I had to help my family. So I was 16 years old, and I just remember my brother coming home crying, hysterical, worried, and we're in my mum's in the bedroom, and my dad was out somewhere, and it was my brother and my mum, and mum was yelling at my brother. He lost his job working at a supermarket. Basically was caught stealing. I believe it was just, in fact, he was cleaning his car, but then he put the car cleaning products in his car, and he was a duty manager at the time. Lost his job, but that car was also financed, and he had no way to pay it down. My mum was a guarantor. So, of course, every single month you need to pay $800. It was a expensive car at the time, $16,000. He had zero income.
Now would be
zero
expensive.
income. It is now, right? But back then, if you look at the multiplier effect of money, that's the equivalent of, call it $35,000, right? So you're paying a lot of damn money for this car, and you've got no income. So I just remember that conversation, and then all of a sudden, I remember my brother telling me about a friend. One of his friends, his best friend, went to work at this place doing labouring, and he lasted a day. But he said to me at the end of that day, he received a check and he got paid cash. And I was told to do the same thing. My dad didn't know at the time, initially, that this was happening. And if he found out, he would have, But the house is on the line at this point, right? Because it was probably the majority of the paycheck that mum was receiving. So it was a big issue for the house. But yeah, so this job came up, and of course I'll do anything, right? So I was working at Woolworths, Safeway. It was called Safeway back then, and Woolworths at the time. Loving my job. I was doing well there, and then at the same time, I was then commissioned to work at a slaughterhouse at 16 years old to bail my brother out.
Who made you do that?
At that point, my dad found out, right? Because I accepted the job, and then they had the courage to tell my dad because they had a plan B, and so the whole family got me to do it.
Fuck. And where was the idea of the Abattoir come though? Where did that come from?
It's that friend. So my brother's best friend who worked there for one day. We needed quick money. Because money was already starting, checks were coming in, right? They were receiving reminder letters. In fact, that's how my dad found out. It was a letter that came into the mail saying, final warning, or something like that. And my dad opened all the mail, and it so happened that letter slipped through my mum's fingers. Obviously, she was working, right? So then he opened the letter, found out, lost his shit. Turkish man, ex-army. Mate, he was... no voice box, but let me tell you, he can yell. He can yell. So yeah, and then at that point, we have a plan, and here I am. That was the plan. So, and the friend, quick money, we needed it quick. And in hindsight, my brother was in year 12, right? I was year 11, and he had to get his enter, right? So he couldn't work.
Fucking hell.
He couldn't work, so let's put this 16-year-old kid in, and let's get him to quit school, pretty much, and get him to work night times as well, and get him to bail out the whole family at this point.
So before we'll spend a little bit of time on the effects of the abattoir on you and things like that, because it is quite daunting, is it? Especially for a 16, for anybody really. I think you definitely have to have a certain stomach and a certain mindset to work in one of those places. But in particular, so if you don't want to actually be there, how much were they paying at this time per day? Let's say put it into context for us.
Well, I knew the daily rate because my brother's best friend only lasted 1 day.
1 day, yeah.
So he took home, it was around about $180 cash for 1 day. And
that was a lot of money then, was it?
Yeah, well, for a 16-year-old, that's like you've hit jackpot, right? I remember working at Woolworths, my paycheck for a whole month was $461. I remember that, and that was like on the high side.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, 1 day, I can, but he lasted a day for a reason. Even with that knowledge, they still put me in there.
What year was this?
This was... So this would have been 2000s.
Yeah. Because I came here in 2008, right?
99, I think it was. 99, 2000, yeah, something like that.
When I was working as a backpacker here, I'd done my basketball thing and whatnot, and then I ended up working in Sunshine in a big picker-packer on Fitzgerald Street or whatever it was, in a factory, freezing cold, and it was boiling outside, and I had the worst migraines on a Friday, chilled head cold because of it. But Tuesday, Wednesday, I remember working, getting $950 for 3 days' work. I was like, what on earth is this? But I broke my back doing it. Like all these foreign European workers would pick a rate so fast. I'm like, there's no way they're picking properly and doing it safely. But they'll tick the box of safety needs and they'll show you and model you how to pick it correctly. But there's no way if you're picking at the rate that they want you to pick at, you can pick it up like that. That was no way. I remember killing myself for 1 quarter, and I just made the record. And I was like, I can't do that 4 times a day.
Yeah.
Anyway.
That's a different level of work. That is hard work, right? So picking oranges and all that sort of stuff, mate. Yeah,
I know. It sounds easy.
It's a rite of passage for somebody who's backpacking, I think. But yeah,
I did 3 days and I quit after like 9 weeks.
Yeah,
I don't even know how I did it for 9 weeks. Looking back,
hard labor. That is hard labor. All right. Yeah. So the person who lasted a day. So my brother's best friend, he worked there for a day, and the reason why he lasted a day, on his very first day, the siren went off in this abattoir, which is like this big concrete prison block. It looks like a bloody prison block, right? What you see in the movies. Anyway,
I'll put some pictures up in a second.
Yeah, we'll get to the I can't wait to talk about that, to be honest. There's untold stories about this stuff. So the siren goes off. When the siren goes off, that means the whole floor stops, right? And there's a big problem. There's this thing called the screw. So imagine this big protruding thing that goes up in the air, and then there's below that there's this truck, and it catches all of the spillover, which is the guts of the lamb, the beef, and all the stuff that don't keep, essentially, right? So that screw screwed up. But what ended up happening is that when that happens, all the water spills over into what's called the dungeon. So the dungeon basically sits under the building, and it's a huge draining system. So once the dungeon blocks up, then you can't do anything because that's a huge hazard, right? So all these massive beef guts spill on the floor under the dungeon. So they sent this kid in, which is my brother's best friend at the time, to basically get a shovel and try to pick up something that weighs. Some of them weigh like 50 kilos, man. Like these huge ones. Other ones weigh like 20 kilos, and you have this big plastic shovel that's a wide shovel. Pick it up, it slips off, water splashes everywhere. So he did that, and I'm pretty sure he didn't even complete a day, and he basically had to just walk out. So then imagine my brother's best friend, hey, I did this job, look at the money I got. Brother, so tell me your story. Tells the story. Oh, it's quick money. Actually, this could, I know this, but let's get my 16-year-old brother to work there. It's like, come on. What parents will let you do that? I mean, I love my mum and dad. Don't get me wrong. She's with us today, and she's amazing. She helps out so much. So I just want to make sure I put that caveat there, right? But it's just the decision-making process from people that come from such war-torn backgrounds and such battles that you're built different now. You hear about that shit, it's like, get on with it. It's a lot of money, so that means more than everything else. So, yeah, that was that. Yeah.
Like you had a few experiences in there. Before, I know we're going to get into it, but let's share some pictures of an abattoir for those who, because I honestly didn't really know what the word was until, and then obviously when I looked at it, I was like, wow, okay. So and these pictures are going to appear upon. So if you are watching on YouTube and Spotify, you'll see the pictures appear on the screen a little bit more clearer than this.
Yes.
But talk to us a little bit about these here.
So you can see the interior, and for anyone who's listening, imagine a lot of steel, just stainless steel in every direction that you look at, and a concrete floor. And there's a huge conveyor belt that you see at the very bottom of that picture. You can barely see it, right? And yeah, that's the lamb kill floor. The other one was the beef kill floor, literally the kill floor. So there's you can see a rail of a chain, and all these bodies go around, which is the carcasses. They're literally still warm as they come to you. Yeah, that's the lamb kill floor. And the other one was the beef. The beef bodies were just something spectacular. Yeah, that's an image of the beef floor. There's a little lift you can see there. So again, steel everywhere. There's lifts that you stand on. There's no barriers or anything, and it goes up and down as you basically cut up and down these beef bodies. If you think about a 2-story building, these carcasses go from the very top down to the very bottom. Some even drag along the floor as they're going around. They're so big, and then at that point they're cut in half. And a lot of steel. It's just, that was my life for 5 years essentially. So.
Do you want to do a little bit of a warning for the next one, Adam? Because I don't really know what to say, if I'm being honest.
Full disclosure. So this is the origination point of what we call mutton, which is lamb. This is just as they come in and get slaughtered. So let's quickly there it is there. That's an infamous picture.
Well, we've come to the end of part 1. Adam's story of navigating that parenthood through health crisis and finding strength in the most challenging circumstances is just the beginning. In part 2, when we come back later this week, we're going to dive deeper into his transformation from the mental toll of working in the abattoir to building his entrepreneurial venture, Sales Command. If Adam's story resonates with you, though, I'd love to hear from you. Share your thoughts on social media using the hashtag #LeadingOurOwnWay, and don't forget to subscribe wherever you're listening. Your support helps us continue sharing these powerful stories and journeys of resilience and transformation. Until you come back for part 2, keep leading your own week. Not your own week. Well, you can keep leading your own week, but keep leading your own way, and we'll see you for part 2 with Adam. Join us tomorrow to hear more from today's incredible guests and learn valuable insights to help you lead your own way. Don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you then.